Well, good evening, sisters and brothers. Welcome to yet another Smart Church Amplified session, if you will, conversation. Certainly appreciate everybody stopping in to join us as we sit together, think together, talk to one another about real issues of life based not upon opinion and not upon the latest and greatest self help book of the world, but based upon what the Word of God says for us. We call this session Smart Church Amplified because we take the scriptures, the word of God, our sacred text, but then we expanded the conversation on specific topics such that we are not doing just exegesis work, but we are applying real life situations to what we have learned and what we know from previous experiences with the word and through living in this that we call the earthly realm. Certainly appreciate every one of you, no matter what your day was like. I hope it was well. If it was not, I hope that we can say or do something this evening to make your life, your experience in this flesh just a little bit better. I know it, some of you may be going out to work later on or even on your way to work now. Or perhaps some of you are at work, whatever the case may be. Stick with us as long as you can in this conversation. If you first time, as we so often have first time people with us that just don't identify themselves, and that's cool too. We just want you to know that we're happy you joined us. You're in the right spot. Stick with us. If you feel like joining the conversation via the chat box, that's good. But if you want to remain on the periphery, we're good with that too. We're just happy to have you with us. Consider yourself family. And so make yourself comfortable or a part of what we do. Always, we want to recognize the rebroadcast crew. We certainly appreciate you because you keep us going, knowing that what we say in these conversations will be viewed by you later on, perhaps late in the midnight hours, as the elders would say. And so we want to make sure that what we talk about is true and what we talk about is helpful. And so thank you again for being a part. Know that you are a blessing to us. Just knowing that maybe even on a Thursday evening, somebody is sitting and experiencing this time. Thank you so very much. Let's get to our conversation. I know I say it almost every week, but we may not be that long tonight. I'm cool with whatever way it goes, right? I can sit here and we can talk for as long as you guys want to. I just don't want to, as they say, wear out my welcome with us. So that being said, want to talk tonight from the subject of silence as a weapon, or the power of silence. The power of silence. I look back at notes, and we started this kind of group of conversations around the theme, the power of the pause, taking time to rest, right? To allow ourselves to be rejuvenated uh, intellectually and spiritually and even physically. And then we talked about reigniting after we paused, this notion of reigniting, or getting the fire going again, moving with some purpose. And so tonight, based on the conversation that I've had several times with Dr. Angela, and then I've been checking myself, I want to talk about the power of silence, or using silence as a weapon, and we'll get through it. We certainly appreciate all of you who came in and said good evening already. I'm looking forward to the conversation. So, join me in the book of Proverbs chapter 17, and we will just look at verses 27 and 28. Proverbs 17, 27 and 28. I know you already know, but let me just remind so you can teach some other people. The only book in our sacred text that we don't say has chapters is the book of Psalms. And we either say the number of Psalm or the division of Psalm. I usually say Psalm number 1, but that's the only book in our Bible that does not have chapters. So please don't say you're studying with Errol Domain and go say Psalms chapter 1. Please. Uh, Proverbs chapter 17, verses 27 through 28 calls our attention. Interesting. I want you to, you probably already do this with all of our lessons, but go back and look at this one. Really caught my attention. Reads this way in the New International Version: the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even tempered. Verse 28 says, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. That's the reading of God's word. Excuse me. Just started just because I started talking, but we're good, right? Brother Lewis is already reminding us early voting, September 30th through October 7th. Mark that. We try to get it in early. The power of silence. So I told them this afternoon I was trying to wrap my mind around this notion of using silence to our advantage. And what have we been talking about? How does this fit in? And I thought about from Sunday morning, the sermons, probably starting in June, where I preached a series of sermons based on the theme, I'm going to do better, just like we said, I'm going to do better. I started thinking about that. Yes, God has called us all. We are God's agents on this earth. We represent God's purpose and God's plans ruling in our lives, so forth and so on, right? What we do matters. But it really it does us very little good to kind of strive to be this great representative of God, and our lives are raggedy, right? We're struggling, and we all go through it as the people of God, the ministers of God. I don't care how anointed you are. All of us see that the work we're doing, or the words we use to encourage other people, or just the day-to-day living, be an example for God, is a blessing to other people. And then we look at ourselves and say, think things like, God, you got to be kidding me. All of this good stuff is happening around me, and you see how raggedy I'm living. Not that we're doing it on purpose, right? We're not out there wild and out, so forth, but you see me struggling here. I can't sleep at night. I got this going on, that, this, that, and the third, all of this. And so I think what our messages have been for us is this kind of encouragement, to get ourselves together, to check ourselves, right? Do the inventory. Uh, take a look at how we are living, because sometimes we don't even recognize. We think we in the will of God and we're knocking down walls and so forth, and really we're doing more damage to ourselves with our thinking, with our words, with our actions, than needs to be. And so I found this kind of well, let me back up a little bit. When I read, I don't just sit and read a book or an article or something. I always have an ink pen with me, pencil, highlighter. I'm marking things, I'm underlining things, and I take notes in the margins. That's why I like to have my own book. I prefer books over electronic version because I like to write in the margins. And so I found this written in the margin of a book, somewhere on the back cover or something. And I said, we have been fooled into believing that we have to do more when we should really seek to become more. That thing kind of hit me. We ought to be concerned about, even if we look at several scriptures in the Bible, and even Jesus taught in Matthew 5, Jesus said, our goal is to become perfect while we're on this earth. And the word perfect means mature. He said, be perfect just like your father or your God is perfect. And so our goal is not to be able to look back and talk about everything that we have done, all of the lists that we have checked off or scratched off and so forth, to be busy in this earth. Our goal is, how much am I growing from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year? Right? Can I look back and say, I'm a lot more mature at this time in my life than I was at previous times in my life? Thank you, Sister Nancy Dennis. So I found this quote from Howard Thurman. I don't exactly know where to tell you to go find it. Uh, but Howard Thurman, remember Howard Thurman? We talked about him. Look, uh, Howard Thurman that wrote the one I told you need to have on your shelf, Jesus and the Disinherited, right? You need to have this one. You need to read this man. But Howard Thurman, uh, who was kind of the spiritual leader for that generation of civil rights workers that worked through the 50s and the 60s, including Martin Luther King Jr., Howard Thurman said, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. Sit with that for a moment or two. What is it that sets the fire in you, like we talked about the last time we were together? What is it that sparks in you that, because I don't think that God intended us to just make it through life. I don't think God built us that way, designed us that way, right? God built us that we are forever growing, never stagnant. Yeah, God will tell you go sit still, pause, rest sometimes. But I also believe that God is much more concerned with our condition uh, as individuals and as a collective, as a community, with our conditions as humans in this world, then God is concerned with how much we accomplish, how much we accumulate, how much we are recognized in this world. And that's a part of our ego, and ego can be healthy. Don't get me wrong, everybody wants to be recognized, but I also know that what is more healthy is to recognize that again, the growth and maturity that has happened in our lives. So that was a long explanation for where we're trying to go with all of this. And so from the book of Proverbs, as you could probably tell from the reading, those of you who are just joining us, Proverbs chapter 17, verses 27 and 28. Please keep your sacred scriptures open and some sort of note-taking apparatus. So as you could probably tell, this is talking about the difference between those people who know how to keep their mouths closed and how they live, and those people who are always, as I have a friend who still says to this day, I've been knowing him a long time, still say running off at the mouth, right? Always got something to say, always has the answer. I don't care what the subject matter is, they know something, but we all know those people. And that's cool if that's your personality. But sometimes we do ourselves a favor in terms of our sanity and our peace if we just learn how to use the weapon or the power that God has given us to not use our speech, to be quiet sometimes and observe and listen and discern and remember. Okay, so let's walk through it. The book of Proverbs, I wanted to talk a little bit about this because we don't ordinarily talk about proverbs a lot in our gathering, but perhaps as individuals, and maybe we just need to spend some time walking through this book that is situated in the wisdom section of our sacred scriptures of our Bible. The wisdom section includes Proverbs, Psalms, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Song of Solomon. But Proverbs, which the etymology means to put a word forward. And so it suggests that there is some sort of instruction, some sort of impartation of wisdom. There is some language given among us that's supposed to help us in some sort of way. And if you think about what you know about the book of Proverbs, uh, wisdom is a theme that holds this whole thing together. It is all about wisdom. Another thing you will see, a phrase you will see quite often in the book of Proverbs is this kind of language or speech between an elder and a younger person. My son. You'll see that quite often. My son. Listen to what I say. My son, heed wisdom's call. My son, do like I tell you to do. This is about giving instruction from an elder to a young person. And one of the things that we talked about today is that instructing the younger or the youth is beneficial for both the young person and the community, because what Proverbs is doing is sharing protocols and a code that we would call morality, right? Morality is this kind of system of this is what we value, this is how we live, this is how we live out, if you will, what we value. And so when the elder imparts these codes or protocols of morality to the younger person whose job is to receive it, then the younger person benefits. But not only so, the community benefits. And we'll see later what that looks like when we start talking about the fool in our text. But the community benefits because now we have people with energy and time and vision, right? I'll make the young people, your sons and daughters, have visions. Those people who have visions, they will also have been trained in the ways of our community. Now, I know we all say these young people this and these young people that. I hear teachers say all the time, and shout out to our educators, especially to those who love our children. I hear teachers and administrators in school systems say, these kids can't, or these kids don't, or these don't know, all of that kind of stuff, right? And I sometimes think, and sometimes my mouth gets ahead of me, and I say it out loud. I don't think that's the fault of the student. If you're the teacher of the student, the child is your student. If they don't know, then that might not be their fault. And if it's just two people in this situation, then guess whose fault it can be? I'll leave that there for you to think about it. Sister Daisy Johnson says, my father, the eminent Willie Johnson, told me to be quiet and watch people's actions. They show you their true self. I know that's right. They will show you their true selves. Exactly. Thank you, sis. Um, and so Proverbs is this kind of instruction about about how to be human in the world. I want you to get that if you're taking notes. Proverbs is instruction about how to be human in the world. Now, let me stick a pin there because I don't want you to think because you got some years behind you or some gray hair or you've gained a lot of wisdom and so forth that limits. No, we are all still learning. We are all still learning. In fact, I'll tell you that I have now made the book of Proverbs my private devotion, my personal devotion scripture. I'm going to work my way through it. And perhaps we'll come back later and work through it together. But don't think that this is just for them young people. No, this is for all of us. So uh, it's teaching us how to be human in the world. Exactly the lesson is to know ourselves and then to know who we are to God. Let me say that again, didn't quite come out right. Proverbs is teaching us um, to know who we are to ourselves and then to know who we are to God. Let that sink in for a second. Second, the objective is to know who we are to ourselves and then to know who we are to God. In the first instance, who are we to ourselves? That's the individual and the community, right? So I'm going to give you 4 questions. Give us 4 questions. Get them in your notes. Go back and consider them. 4 questions. How do you organize yourself? By that, I mean, how do you conduct yourself in private and in public? How do you organize yourself? What makes you think that everything is moving like it should be moving? Second question, what protocols do you use to govern yourself? These were likely taught to you. How do you govern yourself? That stove is hot. I shouldn't touch that stove. I don't need to go over there. I better do these 3 things in order to have myself together so that I can get out of the house and go to work. I try not to cuss in front of these people. What protocols do you use to make sure that you are in, the old Masons used to say, due bounds, or you are in due bounds, right? That I'm moving as I should. Third question, how do you relate to yourself? What do you say to yourself? And don't sit there and act like that because we all talk to ourselves. So how do you relate to yourself? For me, I am learning, I have to start walking through the list of things. Okay, I need to plug this in. Then I need to turn this on. I'm talking myself through things now. How do you relate to yourself? Fourth one, what systems and networks of people do you depend upon? What systems, right? Get the money in the bank, take the money and go to the grocery store, buy the food, get it on the table. That's a system. That's a system. Get the gas in the car, drive the car to the church, expect worship to be on time. That's a system. And what about the people? What about the people? Right? Who do you depend upon? All of us depend on somebody to do something. If it's no more than that little cashier that you've been seeing for the last 2 years that's still in high school that checks out your grocery, everybody depends upon somebody for something. Pastor Raby says Proverbs 6, 6, 7, and 8. Proverbs 6, 6, 7, and 8. We need to check it out. Get that one in your notes. Proverbs 6, 6, 7, and 8. Give us a synopsis, Pastor Raby. Just a little small. What is it about? Just a little bit. And we can go back and read it. Sister Charlene Anthony, silence is our pause time to mature and develop to our greatest potential as Christians. Ooh, you better check that one. I'll read it again. Silence is our pause time to mature and develop to our greatest potential as Christians. I like that. Yes. Pastor Raby helping us. Consider that ant, right? How she lives. Yes, yes, yes. Think about how the ant is not a sluggard, lazy, apathetic. Check it. Proverbs 6, chapter 6, 6, 7, and 8. That's a great one. Let me go through the 4 questions again. As we say, right fast. How do we organize ourselves? I'm talking about me. Domain, how do you organize yourself? For me, I got to have every color together with my socks, with my clothes. Otherwise, if it looks chaotic, it's going to mess with me. I won't be able to sleep. I got to get up and straighten that thing out. How do you organize yourself? Now, that's simple, but think you get what I'm saying. Uh, what protocols do you use to govern your life, right? How do you keep yourself in due bound? Number 3, how do we relate to ourselves? How do you talk to yourself? Do you encourage yourself? Do you talk down on yourself? How do you communicate from within? And then if we think about communities, like the small community that we call family, right? Or kind of, you can spread that community out as far as you want. We can think about these questions in the same way, right? How do we organize ourselves as a family? Whose job is it? Who's in charge of, and so forth and so on. We can give protocols to govern ourselves. The easiest one to think about is if you have young people around you. Um, the word, I can't think of the word, but it's that thing, you better be in this house. Curfew. That's the word. Curfew. Right. Don Lewis talking about accountability. Right. Who holds you accountable? If it's the person in your clothes, then it ought to be you holding yourself accountable. Thank you for that, Brother Lewis. Third one, how do we relate to ourselves? Fourth one, what systems and networks of people do we depend upon? Right? What do you know? What do you think about yourself? Okay, as it talks about understand who we are to God. Oh man, read your scriptures. So we got to understand who we are to ourselves. It's what Proverbs teaches us. Understand who we are to God. I'll just give you some you can check out. Psalms 139, verses 1 through 4. How am I operating in this world? Psalms 139, 1 through 4. Trying to make sure I wrote that correctly, right? This is one that talks about God just knows me in and out. God knows how I move. That's what the psalmist is talking about. Psalms 139, 1 through 4. Psalms 139, 13 and 14. For you have formed me in my inward parts. You have covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. And then if you just need one more, Ephesians 3, 17 to 19. Ephesians 3, 17 to 19. That talks about, that's the break in prayer in Ephesians chapter 3, where it's about, I just want you to understand the depths and the heights, the width, and the length of God's love for you. Psalms 139, 1 through 4, Psalms 139, 13 and 14, Psalms 130, Ephesians 3, 17 through 19. But I mean, you can just go through the scriptures and you'll see, right, who you are to God, God's child. And you will be my people and I will be your God. That tells us who we are to God. So tying this in to this notion of silence, right? Our particular text talks about or shows us how to use silence as an instrument to defend ourselves, right? To defend ourselves against ourselves, such that evil thoughts don't turn into evil language, audible language, and then don't turn into evil actions. And by evil, I mean that which is against God, right? Silence, sitting still, as Sister Anthony told us, being silent and not always having something to say helps us to guard ourselves against just getting all out of character, all out of God's will and God's way for our lives. The other thing it does is it helps us to guard against the external encroachments on our lives, right? That's trying to disturb our sanity and disturb our peace, right? That's what being silent, as someone said earlier, uh, is to kind of just sit back and say, okay, I see what you're about, right? So I know that was Daisy that talked about that. I see what you about. So no, you can't come around me with all that negativity. Kendrick Lamar said, don't kill my vibe, right? You can't come around me if all you're doing is talking down on people, talking bad about life. You can't come around me with all of that gossip. PJ Morton made a song, if you're trying to take away my peace, I'm done. We have nothing more to talk about, right? So this notion of being silent and not caught up in everything that's going on helps us to guard ourselves. And by that, I mean to guard our minds, our consciousness, which includes the way we think, which includes our spirit, right? Which will have some effect on our mood, our emotions. Maybe the reason why some of us are disturbed in the spirit, or some of us are always in a bad mood and nobody's done us anything, is because we are not guarding ourselves against those entities, whether they are internal or external, that intend to disturb our sanity and disturb our peace. I'm losing my mind. Well, what's wrong? I don't know. Well, you need to check yourself. I need to check myself. So let's keep going. Let's check out the passage of scripture again. I hope that we're still together. Please, sister, brother, keep teaching us. Please. 27. He who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. All right. So what we're talking about here is to use the authority and the ability to both discern and recognize. Discern and recognize. He who has knowledge. Knowledge is this notion of using discernment and recognizing. Discernment, D-I, right? Cern. Die tells us that something has to be separated. Division, die. And so what happens is D-I, not D-I-E, D-I. What happens is in discernment, you're looking at something and it may be something abstract. And you can decide, okay, this is truth or this is false. I can separate this. This knowledge is useful for me, or this knowledge is not useful for me. So I can separate the two, right? But it also can manifest itself in concrete terms in talking about this is safe to touch or this is not safe to touch. This is dangerous or this will bring comfort. Some of us have received prophecy, or somebody's told us, you need to be careful around so and so, right? And so I'm watching so and so because I'm silent. I'm watching so and I recognize they were either right about so and so or they were wrong about so and so. That's this notion of discernment. But when we talk about recognize literally means to know again. To know again. This speaks to previous experiences, Person with knowledge either discerns or knows something. Again, I've been down this road before. I ain't going out like that again. You played me one time. You're not going to play me again. Brother Donald Lewis says, don't try to stop my seeds I planted from growing. I hear you, good brother. I hear you. Yeah. So when we talk about recognizing, right? Uh, it may even mean that we are instructing Proverbs. We are instructing someone else. No, you don't want to do it that way. I did it like that, and it cost me. I don't want you to have to pay the same cost that I had to pay, right? And so we're either discerning or we are using memory. Memory just keeps seeming to coming back up in our conversations. God gives us memory as a gift. So we're either checking things out, what did it say, digging the scene with a gangster lean, or I have been this way before and I'm not doing that, right? People who discern and recognize, check this out, do not tell everything that they know. I want you to hold that for a moment. People who discern and recognize, they don't necessarily tell you everything they know. They just watching, right? I used to have to tell people all the time, just because I don't say anything don't mean I don't know. I think some of you probably use that one too. Sister Nancy Dennis, observance is key. Right on it. Observe. I like that. Can add that to our list, right? Discern, recognize, observe, or through observance. Yeah, that's good. Brother Donald Lewis, 99.9 times they were right because, oh, watch this one or that one. Yeah, because they have been through that. Excellent. Yes, yes, indeed. People who discern, recognize, and let's add observe. Thank you, sis. Discern, recognize, and observe. They don't just talk just to be talking, right? They're not just making noise. These are the people who are speaking when they do speak, because we're talking about silence as power. When they do speak, it is because they have discerned, they have recognized, or they have observed. Here's the last one. These people use divine speech and good speech. So here we go again. They don't tell you everything they know or that they discern, recognize, or observe. They don't talk just to talk, and they use divine speech and good speech. Let me speed up a little bit so we can get further in the conversation. Um, so when we talk about divine speech and good speech, this is taken from Kemetic or ancient Egyptian philosophy. Speech. When we talk about being quiet, it is not just about our audible. I would suggest that speech, according to what the Kemites or the ancient Egyptians, or the way they used it, it is thought is speech, our tongue gives us speech, and then our arms and our legs, our actions give us speech. Sister Irma Jones, people will take your knowledge and, oh Lord, y'all better hear this one. People will take your knowledge and use it against you. How many times has that one happened? People will take your knowledge and use it against you. I got the perfect example for that when we close. Thank you for that, Sister Jones. Before we close, uh, so speech, silence, right? Not using my speech, thoughts, my mouth, and my actions, my hands, my feet, what I do. So as I just mentioned, divine speech, well, let me back up. All speech is given to us from God because that's how God operates. And you read Genesis chapters 1 and 2 to get that one. All speech is given to us from God. And so there's such thing as divine speech, according to ancient Egyptian philosophy. Divine speech. That's when we're speaking life. Don't give up now. Be encouraged. I just called to tell you that you've been on my mind and everything is going to be all right. Sometimes I will get these texts early in the morning from friends that perhaps I hadn't even heard from in a while. And they'll say things like, church people, right? You've been in my spirit. I just want to encourage you today. Perhaps we all get those, right? Speaking life. This thing will not end for you. This won't end your pursuit, right? This is just a bump in the road. You're going to make it through this. Speaking life. You will not die at this point. We're not going out like this, speaking life. But then we have good speech. That's divine speech. Good speech is when we use the wisdom, when we use discernment and recognition and observance, as our sister taught us tonight. Uh, Good speech means that we are giving instruction. No, you don't quite want to do it that way. Or make sure you follow the instructions. Don't just try to do it on your own. Or why don't you let me help you with that? Or, these kinds of things that are going to help people. We're speaking life. Good speech is speaking wisdom, right? It's how we help people to govern themselves. In fact, it's how our society should be governed. But we know our government is jacked up, or the government around this world, operating by the myth of white supremacy, is jacked up. And so they're not using good speech at all. Even now, we know that they are holding the budget hostage that's going to put many people out of work who work for the federal government. That's not good speech. I won't go down that hole. So we have divine speech, we have good speech, and then we have evil speech. Divine speech, good speech, evil speech, evil thoughts, evil words, evil actions. That's stuff like gossiping. That's stuff like doing dirty things just because you can. That's, if you the boss, you impose on your employees, not because it's going to make anything better, but you just want to be ugly. Those kinds of things, right? Evil thoughts. Oh, she, that kind of stuff. Or when we talk to one another, did you see? Or child, let me tell you, all of that kind of stuff. That's evil speech. God gives us speech. We are to use God's gift of speech for divine speech, speaking life, good speech, speaking wisdom, or no, and not use for evil speech. So our text tells us the power of keeping silent. The person who knows how to keep silent uh, has a calm spirit about themselves. You're not gonna catch them going up and down. Always, somebody mentioned earlier today, always in a crisis, right? They either or their life is coming to an end. The sun won't shine. The ground is gonna cave. All of that stuff. No, people who know how to use divine speech and good speech, people who know how to use their silence to their advantage, they calm about it. They just sit there and let you talk. And as Daisy taught us earlier, they letting you talk, but they are discerning, they are recognizing, and they are observing. So let's talk about that fool. Fool, the etymology for fool suggests somebody who is silly, stupid, or ignorant. But if a fool ever learns how to keep their mouth closed, you'll never know it. Think about that one. Our text lets us know that even the fool, if they learn how to keep their mouth closed, they can trick us into believing that they are intelligent, that they have been trained, right? That they have discipline about themselves. But I love this quote where the sister says, "As soon as a fool opens their mouth, you know they haven't been trained, and you know they don't have any discipline." Professor Greg Carr says everything will be all right until you open your mouth and put your brain on display. Think about that one. So when we talk about using silence, as I told you at the top, this comes from a long conversation, a continuous conversation that Dr. Angela and I have. We'll leave it and come back to it and so forth and so on. And it started here. She's in class, graduate seminar somewhere. And she's the only one of us in the class. And in the conversation, someone else, now remember, she's the only one of us in the class. Someone else says that the Cosby Show, those of you who are old enough to remember the Cosby Show, with Cliff and Claire and the kids and all that stuff, she said that, said that the Cosby Show set people back because it was unrealistic. And Angela told me that when she said that, remember, she's the only one in the class. When the other person said that, everybody looked at her to see what she would say. And that's when she learned the power of silence, because she just sat there and looked back at them as if to say, you are not drawing me into this foolishness, into this conversation. I'm not going to have this conversation with somebody that don't know anything about being black. So how can you talk about what set black people backwards? And so we continue on. Let me pause. Brother Donald Lewis says, don't let people hear you arguing with a fool. They won't know who the fool is. I love that one. Man, can I put that on a t-shirt? Don't let people hear you arguing with the fool because they won't know who the fool is. I know that's right. Right? So, in 1963, there's a sister in Alabama working for NASNIC Corps. What was it? Council for, I forget, I'll mess it up. Sister name is Mary Hamilton. She's in Alabama helping people register to vote, 1963. A group of them get arrested, and so she has to go to court. Now, when the prosecuting attorney addresses her in court, she's on the stand, the prosecuting attorney refuses to call her Miss. This is a grown woman. Keeps addressing her by her first name, when protocol is Mr. or Miss, or perhaps Doctor or some other title. So the prosecuting attorney refuses to call her Miss, 1963, MS, Miss. Sister, Mary Hamilton is her name. You might want to Google her. Sister refused to answer him because he would not address her correctly, using silence or using the power of silence, or using silence as a weapon. At any rate, she would not answer, so much so that the judge in the case, said that she was in contempt of court. And so she ends up spending a little more time in jail. But she made her point clear. The case went all the way to the Alabama Supreme Court. They all sided, of course, with the white supremacists. But sister just said, you know what? I'm not participating in this. If you can't address me correctly, then I will not give you the dignity of this of participating in this undignified situation. Brother Donald got us, Congress of Racial Equality. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So Mary Hamilton, check out sister, powerful sister. He was calling her Mary, and she was sitting there like he wasn't even talking to her. So when we talk silence as power, silence is the refusal to dignify that which is undignified. Silence is the refusal to participate in that which is undignified. You know what I thought about? You know those times that uh, I know I used to, perhaps you didn't, that I would go to my parents and they give me the answer and I try to press the issue, see how far I could go before they talk about whipping me or before they try to snatch me. So I keep trying to press the issue, and mama, dad, mother, father, daddy, mama, whatever you want to call them, would just stop talking to you, right? Just that's it. This conversation is, oh, I am not dignifying this undignified behavior uh, by participating in this conversation. I've already told you what it is or what it's not going to be. And so Shirley would or Alvin would just stop talking. That's it. It's over. You can move on with your life. Some of us have learned that we have to do that even as we are moving around in the marketplace of life. I know I'm right about that. That people try to engage you in silliness and you just got to act like I don't even hear you talking. That's stupid. You got to learn the hard way. I know that's right. Got to learn the hard way, Brother Donald. So I'm not participating in the undignified. Here's the next one, and then we'll be out. Silence sometimes means that we have to refuse to go along to get along. I refuse to use my speech just to appease you or just to make you happy or just to go along so you can include me. Speech, my thoughts, my mouth, my words, my actions. I refuse to use my speech, so I'll be silent. And what it made me think about, right, is the way this world almost tries to bully us into going along for the sake of modernization, for the sake of progression, right? Or just for the sake of being included in the latest and the greatest. We see that all the time in advertisement to buy things. And so, what we have to think about is sometimes we have to be silent when we know that this notion of modernization or progression is really moving us away from those things that we know to be true. All so called progress, uh, all so called advancement is not necessarily good. And so, if it's moving you away from your purpose, if they're trying to make you feel guilty because you know because you're not modern and they say things like you still think like that or you still doing it that way or something like nobody does that anymore. That's not the way of the world, but you know this is correct and this is a part of God's plan for your life or your purpose. This is what keeps you sane and gives you peace, right? PJ Morton, if you're trying to take away my peace, I'm done. I'm not doing that, right? Everybody vapes. I'm not doing that, right? And if you eat my food and living in my house, you're not doing it either. Or if you coming to me for money, you're not doing it either. Got a little quick story, a little quick anecdote. Uh, so um, I'll use me, but it's not me. So this kind of true fiction. Um, so my daughter, as you can imagine, always hit me up, right, for money. Always, can I have this? Can I have that? Can you do this? Da da da. Can you help me out here? Can you? Uh, but I noticed she hadn't been coming to worship, and so I questioned. I'm using me, but this is not me. So I questioned, and she says, "Oh, I've been going to the white church on the other side of town. All of my friends go there. It's popular. I enjoy it." Now, some people would say, I should say that I'm just happy she in church. But no, because you see, when you come to me for $5, or when I put gas in your car, or when you need a new dressing, all that goes with that, the people in your church who pay me, that's their money. And so you gonna come to this church because you using these people's money. I'll move on from that. That'll hit you in a little while. So it means I'm not going along uh, just because it looks good or everybody's doing it. I'm not wearing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not saying. I'm not going to a place. All of that stuff. Here's one you ought to write. Consider as we at with this point: Jesus and the temptation in the mountain, Matthew 4. Go back and look at how he handles it. Jesus is using his silence, even though he's hitting the devil with scripture, because he's saying my actions are silent. I'm not doing that. Last one. And this goes back to what Sister Irma was teaching us about people using your knowledge against you. I don't know if you remember or have ever read but about Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was the man in the early 20th century. Sing, Phi Beta Kappa, All American at football. Paul Robeson was everything. He was the biggest actor of his day, the biggest singer. He would be the Beyonce, right? Beyonce's concert is in New Orleans tonight, I think. He was the Beyonce of his day. Um, but he made a speech, uh, Tanisha Howard, my actions speak louder than my words. I know that's right. I know that's right. So, yes, indeed. So Paul Robeson gives this speech in France that the white nationalists try. He said, why would black people go fight in the war, basically, and the white nationalists try to use that speech against him and call him a communist. But rather than just bringing him up on charges, this is in the day of the McCarthy hearings in Congress. What they did was they called Jackie Robinson to denounce Paul Robeson because they knew that Jackie Robinson was a Republican in his day. And so Jackie Robinson said, I'll read what he says. It's rather short. This is a part of a long speech, of course. And one other thing the American public ought to understand if we are to make progress in this matter, the fact that it is a communist who denounces injustice in the courts, police brutality, and lynching when it happens doesn't change the truth of his charges. Just because a communist kick up a big fuss over racial discrimination when it suits their purposes, a lot of people try to pretend that the whole issue is a creation of communist imagination. So, as you can imagine, um, Jackie Robinson was really talking against Jim Crow and all of the indignity and inequality in the country. But because he mentioned communists, they said, oh, he calling Paul Robeson a communist. Talk about taking your knowledge and using it against you. But what Jackie Robinson was really doing was saying, I'm not participating in this farce. I'm not participating in trying to tear down this great man. Well, they tore down Paul Robeson anyway, took his passport, made his records illegal in the country, and all of that kind of stuff. Later, Jackie Robinson said, I watched Paul Robeson, and this is my paraphrase: no greater American on this earth, right? No greater man moving around, no greater human than Paul Robeson. But they used what Jackie Robinson said against him and tore Paul Robeson down. Last one, right? I refuse to participate in this. Probably the most famous that we know is Muhammad Ali, right? I'm not going to fight in the Vietnam War because the yellow man has never done me anything. You the one lynching my people. You the one, remember all of that language he used? Yes. So, got to refuse to participate. Silence can be used as power to protect your peace and your sanity. Sister Charlene Anthony, listening is a key component in understanding human behavior without uttering a word. Silence. Thank you, sis. Man, see what is so powerful and beautiful about this is we sitting together, we having this conversation, we teaching one another. and it looks like, just simple conversation. But if we put this in an academic setting, right? We're talking sociology, like like Sister Anna just talked about. We've been talking philosophy, and we just been talking just these are the things like the book of Proverbs. These are the things you need to know to move around as a human in this world, to be at peace with yourself. Thank you all so much. This has been great for me. I hope it's been great for you. Didn't quite make it the early conversation that I thought I would. I'll try to do better. I know people have things to do, but thank you. Early voting. Right. Donald Lewis mentioning again the early voting, stay woke. And if you don't vote early, thank you for mentioning this. If you don't vote early, Southern's homecoming is October 14th. And so before you go to the homecoming celebrations, please go and vote. So that hits two things I want to say. One, souls to the polls for us this Saturday, 10 a.m. We are going to the Louisiana Archives building en masse, if you will, as a group, not just us, Shiloh, New Sunlight, Redwood, Donaldson Chapel, and King Solomon out of Banks. So we're covering Easy Town, the Park, the Boulevard Bottom, even in Zachary and Banks. We're all coming together. We're trying to get to the Louisiana Archives building at 10 a.m. That's at, I think, the address 3821 Essen Lane. Please, sir and ma'am, let's go show force there. Now, we might have to stand in line, but let's go show force there to show that we intend to not just vote, make our vote count, but to vote early, right? In the first hour and a half of when the polls open, to just make a statement that we don't want the Klan in our governor's mansion. So please help us there. Also, tied into that, what Donald Lewis was talking about, let's say you don't vote September 30th through the 7th. Get there early, go take care of the voting situation, then go celebrate homecoming. The next day, October 15th, we are having what we're calling homecoming celebration at the Grove, at Elm Grove. And so we're inviting all of those people that were once connected to Elm Grove, all of those people who we see that needs to be connected to Elm Grove. We are having a wonderful service plan. Brother Greg Jones, whose roots are in this church, Clarence Jones's son, will be in town for homecoming, but he is coming to worship with us, putting together a choir of former members of Elm Grove, members of Elm Grove. It's going to be a wonderful time. If you want to sing in that choir, rehearsal is going to be at 7 a.m. October 15th before the worship service starts. You'll hear more about, we're planning a fellowship for after service. So we're going to keep the homecoming vibe rolling on through the 15th as we come together to worship and celebrate our God and to fellowship with one another. October 15th, it is going to be powerful. So we're taking care of the voting. We're going to have our homecoming celebration this Friday night. I think is the 29th, Authentically Anointed. That is the group of our brother Corey Stewart, and Christina participates. Excuse me, participate in that group. In that group, they will be here Friday night benefit concert for our little sister Mallory Chapman, who used to minister here with her mother Karen Chapman. I talked about Sunday. Nobody sings that song, oh, how precious, like Mallory. She probably rivals, man, I can't think of the woman's name out of Houston, Kathy Taylor. Mallory probably rivals Kathy Taylor, and that's Kathy's song. So we want to be here to support Mallory as she goes through some very challenging health issues. Want to bring an offering so that we can be a blessing to the sister, try to alleviate some of her financial strain as she fights her way through this illness that is attacking her body. We are believing for healing for the sister as well. Thank you all so much for being with us. I love you. Have a wonderful evening. I'll see you either in them streets or I'll see you Sunday morning here I'll see you Saturday at the Souls to the Poles, and then I'll see you Sunday morning for the worship. Peace.